What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato holding it down in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. Fun one coming up today. We got the answer we were all looking for. Danny Hurley and the UConn Huskies. But what should we have seen it coming all along? We'll get to that. But Claudia, what else do we have coming up on the show today?
Well, just that. We're going to call him the $1 million Dan because it was a no for him, dog. He rejects Lakers offer. Goes back to UConn for the three-peat. Staying in Steel City, ESPN's Brooke Pryor will join us to talk Tomlin and his extension. And series over. Charlotte Wilder on the finals in hour 2. Is it going to be a sweep? Can Dallas get one? Can they make a comeback? Probably not. And we're going to talk hockey, of course, because the Panthers go up 2-0 on the series against Edmonton. But Dan Hurley, definitely the topic of conversation yesterday, turns down the 6-year, $70 million offer, goes back for the third straight title with UConn. The Lakers contract would have made him the 6th highest paid coach behind Steve Kerr, who's won, Greg Pop, Spoelstra, Lou, Monty Williams, and then Hurley. So there's a lot of different conversations popping up, and now we're getting, the question of what's next for the Lakers? What's next for Hurley? Can he really chase that third title? To me, though, I look at these numbers and say, maybe that's not high enough. Should he be getting paid higher than Monty Williams and Ty Lue? So I guess it's not that surprising, right, GoJo?
I think there's a lot about this that now in hindsight looks sort of interesting in the light, Dad. We talked about yesterday how clear-cut and open this entire process seemed to be with Danny Hurley and the Lakers communicating openly, getting almost instant feedback off of his interview with the Lakers, and ultimately the decision being made in such a timely fashion, communicated so well with his team. I know Joe Pampliano is the one that really started to raise the flag on, was this all just one calculated ordeal to try and get him a better contract situation with the UConn Huskies? But Dad, for you, as someone that was so excited to see what kind of king's ransom he could potentially pull in from the Lakers, were you surprised ultimately by that number and the decision that followed?
So let's start with the number. Yes, I was surprised. When the report's a massive deal, making $11.6 million a year would have been a massive deal. But we're talking about pro sports. We're talking about coaches. We're talking about going in to try and pry somebody away from where he's been as a 2-time national champ. I was expecting more. I was expecting, now maybe he wouldn't have done it, as we're going to kind of start to talk about, but I heard Kendrick Perkins talking about it, and I kind of agreed. It's kind of like that free agent that comes to town. You know what you don't let him do if you really want him? You don't let him leave. You make it so he wants to sign, and you make the deal sweet enough so he is going to stay. So I was a little surprised. Now, do you sit there and want a guy who's never coached in the NBA to be one of the highest paid? No, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's all about getting a guy there. It's all about the timing of everything. The timing is perfect for him right now. So I was surprised. I thought he'd be in the top 3. I thought he'd be at least $15 million a year, because the other thing you have to think of is what you're competing against. It's not like all of a sudden he's now going to make $11.6 million. It's what's UConn going to offer him. And if he really likes it there, and we know his wife really likes the East Coast, how much do you have to get over the fact that UConn's going to make him the highest paid coach? And the highest paid coach is Bill Self at like 9.6. Hurley is going to get $10 million a year at UConn, right? He was 7th going into last year, I believe, at $5 million a year. He's probably going to, they're going to make him the highest paid. So that means you got to get over 9.6. So let's just say $10 million. So if you're the Lakers, you have to know that. You have to know he's going to make something in that range, and you're offering him $1.6 million more. Now, it is the NBA and it is the Lakers. I get it. But still, if you want somebody to come there and you got to know, kind of have some foresight at what he's going to get offered somewhere else or back at UConn, man, you gotta blow him out of the water with an offer so he doesn't leave town if you truly want him and he actually is thinking about leaving, which I'm not really sure he was.
I think the important factor in all that is there was, and we heard this from Woj's report early on, an offer on the table already from UConn to elevate Danny Hurley's price tag. And I think going back and looking at Woj and the way that things were worded is important right now, because one of the things that got mentioned was the NIL purse at UConn, basically saying, yeah, they're not a team that's got a monster Division I football program that can recruit NIL money the way some of these big football powerhouses can. And so I'm sure this is a great leverage tactic to not only get more money for Danny Hurley, but to get things like that. Hey, let's get a bigger commitment from our donors for the NIL budget for this school going forward. Let's try and secure all these things that now, as the two-time defending champ, I can ask for. It's a feeling that I had yesterday that once I saw Joe Pampliano tweeting about that, all of a sudden started to crystallize, where you do wonder, hey, was this all just one large public leverage tactic using one of the most storied franchises in sports? Because, Dad, now, if you're Danny Hurley, you get to walk back in Connecticut. I mean, you got the governor, Ned Lamont, tweeting about it. Yeah. You're a conquering hero and someone that already has a statue now coming up in that state, I'm sure, because you can say in the same offseason, hey, your head coach in little old Connecticut, in Storrs, Connecticut, turned down the Kentucky Wildcats, one of the premier blue blood coaching jobs in college basketball, and the Los Angeles Lakers, one of the glamour franchises in all of sports, forget just the NBA. And that's something that now they can go into every recruiting pitch with, and certainly can beat their chests about going into next season, where they're one of the favorites to go out and win the title and complete the three-peat there. So I think all of it is a little bit too neat and tidy for my liking. Dad, even if I do want to believe in my heart of hearts that his wife's love of New Jersey is now officially the strongest force in sports. Because if we're to suspend disbelief on all that other stuff, we go back to the simplest thing, and you've always pointed this out, which is these decisions tend to be about a lot more than just the X's and O's or what's going on around the building. They tend to be about family stuff. And we have heard for quite some time now, hey, his wife really loves being close to New Jersey. And just by my quick math, and I know, we've had some discrepancies with like Los Angeles and the Moon before on TNT, Connecticut is a little bit closer to New Jersey than Los Angeles, even if you've got private jet access. And so part of me likes to believe that, yeah, that was just strong enough to make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing I will always say, unless Dan Hurley comes out and tells us exactly the reasons, hey, my wife loves the East Coast. I just wanted to be here. I want to go for the three-peat. I'm sure we'll hear things like that, especially from the college side, the three-peat side, unfinished business to try and do what hasn't been done since John Wooden won 7 straight, even though, we'll get to the odds of that happening. I'll say this. Because his name, remember, kind of came out of the blue, didn't it, Mike? I mean, we talked to J.J. Redick. His name was out there, and other names have been out there. Other names have actually interviewed for this job as well, because the Lakers couldn't put all their eggs in the Dan Hurley basket just in case this happens. So you have to have a plan B or plan C. And now anybody who signs with the Lakers know they were a hard plan B, and it might be a plan C wherever they're going to go. But one of the other things I've always said is, coach, player, whoever, I don't care if you're in business, outside of sports, whatever. You have the leverage hammer, you swing it. You swing it as hard as many times as you can. And Dan Hurley was sitting in the catbird seat with the Lakers coming after him, with UConn wanting to keep him. I mean, he's in about as strong a position right now as can be. Listen, if he wins a third in a row, I mean, it'd be even stronger, but that's going to be a tough call. But right now, he is in the strongest position that he can be. So if he did this whole thing with really not a lot of intention to go to the Lakers, but to pick up everything, get him more money, maybe get his assistants more money, maybe get more money in the collective, then if he did that, if that was in his mind to do, then more power to him because he pulled it off.
Well, Dad, what I want to say on that front is you mentioned the position of power that he was in when it came to this decision. And if we're going to put the rest of that stuff to the side for a moment, where all of this feels a little bit more orchestrated than we're used to, and part of it might feel like a work right now, if you were to just take the decision earnestly and say, this man has a stated interest in coaching in the NBA. He said that on multiple platforms in public in front of microphones. And he's also someone who is the head coach of the back-to-back defending champs. And we know a three-peat hasn't been done since the 70s with UCLA, like the John Wooden teams that don't feel like they'll ever be possible again in modern college basketball. From a purely basketball and opportunity standpoint, could you say that this was his best chance to make a jump like this, knowing that then even if he failed in the NBA, his stock in college basketball will likely never be higher than it is right now for a team to invite him back should that have flamed out? From a basketball opportunity standpoint, could you argue that this was his best chance to make this jump in a way that mitigated risk?
Well, I mean, what if he wins a title next year? I mean, he's gonna.
Well, you know how hard that is to three-peat.
Oh, no. You're asking me. Is this the high? It may be, but what would keep his level up there? Winning another title, getting to the Final Four. Would that be enough to keep his stature up there? To have someone go after him again in the NBA. Do I think it's probably at its peak right now of this? Probably, yes, because I do think it's very difficult to, I probably would not lay odds that they're going to win and have a three-peat. They're missing, the three players? I think two of them are going to be lottery picks, I think, and another player as well. I know their odds are up there pretty high, but it is difficult to do. But that would be a way, if he were to pull it off again and have a three-peat, we could go through all this again, and maybe the offers would be even more in the NBA. So if this was his way of playing it out, he played it extremely well, because I honestly have no idea how close he was to going to the Lakers. But again, I'll say, if you're the Lakers, you have to have foresight that they're going to offer to make him the highest paid. It's very easy to look up who the highest paid is. And if they do that, his money at UConn is now going to be really close to the money you're offering him. So if you want to separate yourself, saying we're the NBA, we're the Lakers, and we're going to offer you $6 million more. Everybody has a number, and I don't know what his number is. Everybody's got a number. But right now, those, from a pure financial standpoint, and there's more into it than just the finances, the numbers were going to be pretty close.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to pull it back to, though, is it's more than just a numbers decision, I think, when you're trying to calculate all this stuff. And I think he does have comfort and stability at UConn right now, which we know in the current college landscape is rare. So I can understand wanting to hold on to that, and also looking and understanding, do I want my first foray into the NBA to be this? Because the Lakers right now are an imperfect product based on how we assess them. They're a team whose best player, or at least best named player, is 40 years old, and we're talking more about the draft status of his son and how that factors into the decision than we are him and his longevity with the team anymore. The roster's imperfect in a bunch of ways that we saw this year, and so you could argue that plus the scope, the microscope you'd be under, would be a lot to have your first foray into professional basketball being, and make the decision pretty easy amongst the two. But Claudia, I want to go to you because I know we've got the odds, because there is a side of this, Dad, for the Lakers that's got to be deeply embarrassing. Like, whether or not you were serious about this, and maybe they're in the mastermind thing too, but on the surface, Lakers fans looking at this have to feel like, all right, we just got the Heisman from a college basketball coach right now after hearing all offseason that J.J. Redick was going to be our coach. What's going on, and why aren't people flocking to us like the Lakers, Claudia?
So this is basically the plan B conversation for both sides of things. But you guys mentioned the odds, and you're right, Senior. They're up there. You're getting good at this odds thing. Kansas, Bama, and UConn all tied at 10-1. So yes, the odds are still long, but that's because it's so early in the preseason. But they are a favorite, tied with Kansas and Bama. So UConn expected to be one of the teams to make it close. As for them, it would be the three-peat. As for the Lakers, though, The Pelicans assistant, James Borrego, is expected to remain part of the LA candidates group. And Gojo, you can talk about this. It's sort of like Woj versus Shams, which is going to be a fun drama part of this. So Woj tweeted that, and it said the Lakers could conduct their first formal interview with JJ Redick. So first formal interview is very different than when Shams reported that LA was zeroing in on JJ Redick. So curious how that one turns out, but I guess that makes a little bit more sense to what JJ Redick said on this show. Like, I'm going to have to talk to Shams about this one.
Yeah, I was going to say, lest we not forget, Dad mentioned it. It was the day before all this dropped when JJ Redick comes on our show and says, hey, my focus is on the NBA Finals right now. I'm not worried about all this stuff. And by the way, Shams, I got something for you later on after all that happened. So there is some of the warring insiders of this that I absolutely love, which is way too inside baseball for everybody else. But Dad, now for the Lakers, optically, how does this look for them?
Oh, this is definitely an embarrassing thing. That's why I can't believe they didn't try, and maybe they did, I don't know, to up the offer to not let him leave town. I mean, listen, this happens all the time as far as teams not getting their first choice, right, and have to go to plan B, plan C. But a lot of that's behind closed doors. A lot of that is a little more muddled than this one, which was clearly, we want Dan Hurley. We want him to coach our team in the NBA with the Lakers organization, one of the great franchises of all time. He's the man, and he just turned you down. He just turned you back down to go back to a great team, but back to Storrs, Connecticut, as opposed to LA. So, yes, I think it is definitely embarrassing for them because who knows if they'll get the plan B guy or the plan C guy. I have no idea. You know, if JJ Redick actually gets his first interview now, how is that going to go? So I think everything will stay in the background a little more than how in front of the camera this one was. And again, if this was orchestrated by Dan Hurley, kudos to him because it all seemed to work out. Because what do you do, Mike, in a situation for anybody, right, that is being courted by two places? You make your pro and con list, right? So you say, is this a pro or is this a con? You know, that's what you do.
What are the pros and cons in your mind for this from the Lakers and for UConn and Danny Hurley's mind?
Well, let's start with what part of the country do you like to live in? I mean, that's obviously a pro for UConn, right? Because all the talk, he's talked about his wife and New Jersey. And I can't say enough how important the family aspect of this thing is. You want to keep the family happy, especially your wife as well. I don't know how much was in this, but we know that they love this part. Yes, that's on the list. So that's a pro. Comfort level, that's a pro for UConn. Money, the money, let's be honest, that's probably pro for UConn because it's going to be close to, you can't sit there and say, well, the Lakers far and away, because that difference, again, is probably going to be a $1.5 million. And that is not enough, especially if you have a comfort level at UConn to say, oh, wow, okay, man, do you say no to that? Well, when it's going to be $1.5 million and you have all those other big pros in your favor, yes. I mean, and for the Lakers, I'm sure they were banking on Hurley wants to coach in the NBA and we're the Lakers. And that didn't fly. So the pro list for UConn, going back to UConn, I think was still a bigger list. And I don't know where the money would have separated, even if they would have offered more to try and keep him there. I don't know, because maybe more of the other pros were just too much in favor of staying at UConn.
I think that's the interesting thing to consider as all this we weigh sincerity is, was it the Lakers miscalculating the value of their own brand and saying exactly what you just said here? Hey, the money will be close and we're the Lakers. Like this guy wants to coach in the NBA and we're the Los Angeles freaking Lakers. Or was it, yeah, they were never actually serious about this to begin with. All of this was an exercise. And now they get to say they tried. And on the other side, one of their candidates, now they can point and say, hey, we tried to go get the best coach in college basketball and bring him up there. And that didn't work. So now we're back to where we're at. It's sort of what I always talked about with the Minnesota Vikings and J.J. McCarthy in the draft, where we got told the whole draft cycle, oh, he should be the number one quarterback. He could go in the top 4. And then they get him at 11, which still in most people's pre-draft estimation would have been a reach, but after all that conversation, it seems like they got value there. And so I can't help. Maybe I'm too lost in the forest, and this is my own version of conspiracy theories that I need to let go of. And maybe it is just as simple as, hey, this guy really liked the comfort and stability of being close to home. He's got a job that he knows front and back right now. And he's also, and you hear veteran players talk about this all the time, Dad, Tom Brady and a lot of those guys saying, hey, I've got the answers to the test now this late in my career. I've been around and done this thing long enough in one spot to know how to do this. Why would I leave now when it's just getting fun, when I feel like I know what I'm doing? And there is no doubt about Danny Hurley now has unlocked the system. You mentioned the cavalcade of stars that left UConn last year. That was the same thing that happened last year. They were replacing a bunch of key pieces from that championship team the year prior, and they still got back there and were even more dominant. And now they get the chance to try and go ahead and do it again. Coming up next, we'll talk about the Celtics' pursuit of championship hardware here on GoJo and Golic.
Attention NBA fans, introducing the NBA Finals Champions Collection presented by DraftKings. Celebrate your favorite team with the DraftKings limited edition championship collection shirt. Shop the complete collection exclusively on the DK shop at shopdraftkings.com. And I'm sporting one here. It's actually very soft and comfortable. I know that GoJo and Senior have their own. I obviously have the Celtics. I may wear this one of the days when we win and we sweep in 4. With that, let's talk Celtics as we go to Cash It or Trash It, presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned to hear everything DraftKings has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problems? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. I want to talk about this MVP market, guys, because the conversation heading into this was Luka, Kyrie, Tatum, and Brown. Who's the better duo? That's who's going to win. Well, actually, it's really been the role players, especially for the Celtics. Holiday, White, Porzingis. Drew Holiday, I want to zero in on, though. 38 points, 19 rebounds, 8 assists, and 0 turnovers so far through 2 games. The last player with 38-plus points 0 turnovers in the first 2 games in the finals. Just Michael Jordan, 1998. Here's what Holiday had to say about his role after game 2.
I'm a utility guy. I'll do whatever. I'm here to win. I feel like they brought me here to win, and I'll do my best to do that. But at the end of the day, this is their team. And I know it's probably just as much as my team as theirs, but again, I feel like I've talked about this before. The pressure that they have on themselves to execute and to be great is a little bit different than my pressure.
A humble man, he is. He is plus 750 to win MVP with the 4th shortest odds. These odds have shifted a little bit. Yesterday, Tatum was plus 125. Brown was plus 175. Brown now to plus 160. So yes, this market is going to be changing throughout the series. I want to know though, Senior, are you cashing or trashing a Drew Holiday Finals MVP? MVP is the word at plus 750.
I'm probably going to trash that. This is such a well-rounded team that you don't know who's going to be the next guy. He's had 2 really good first games, especially a game 2. But we've seen Jaylen Brown do well. Tatum not scoring a lot, but doing other things. I think this is such a well-rounded team that I do think it's just going to continue to shift. So I think it's going to be one of those, if it were a better series, you could almost see someone on the losing team like a Luka Doncic getting the MVP because he's doing everything for his team and there's not one standout for Boston, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be a close series, so that's not going to happen. It's going to be somebody on Boston. And if you'd made me lay down $1 right now, I would probably put it on Jaylen Brown over everybody else. But it's a tough pick right now because they're spreading the wealth.
I think, Dad, let's put it this way. Drew Holiday's the value play right now because this is a team where everything's been so evenly spread throughout the series. And just in general, we have a hard time, and we have had so much hard time legislating who's the best or whatever on this team, that when you get things like this, Drew Holiday became the first player since they started recording turnovers to record 25 or more points, 10 or more rebounds, 75% or more field goal percentage, and no turnovers in a game. Like, he's starting to get enough numbers behind him in this series, and I think he's going to keep having opportunities. The Celtics have to win 2 more games. And he said it best. If you're the Dallas Mavericks, you're never going to be defending Drew Holiday as the primary threat in the Boston Celtics offense. The attention is always rightly going to go to Brown and Tatum. And so he's going to keep having opportunities, and Drew Holiday's the only champion on this roster. He's the only guy that's got that experience, and he's used to doing it as the role player on a team with bigger star names than him on it. He's perfectly suited for this role that's seen it in the past. We talked about the comp yesterday to the early Warriors squads where you had someone like Andre Iguodala who, and remember, Drew Holiday's also got the added advantage of, hey, he's a massive defensive plus. He's an all-NBA defensive player. And in a series with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, that's going to be part of the headline we write in this. So I could absolutely see sprinkling money on this and feeling good about it. But you're right. The real opportunity, and I think the one that probably, if things go well for the Celtics in all these ways, is going to be Jaylen Brown. He's shown himself to be the aggressor in this series in a way that I just think Jason Tatum's never going to be fully comfortable with. He's a great player. He's created well with others, but Jaylen Brown has gotten the attention from the opposing coaching staff, even if it's somewhat disingenuous, but he certainly has stepped up to be the leader for this Boston Celtics team.
Yeah, that's, again, where I would go. But, I mean, you're right. As far as value, to throw a couple of bucks on Holiday would be the way to go. I mean, because after those 4, the next up is Porzingis at what is he at, plus 4,000. And we don't even know what he says he's going to play. You know, as he hurt the same leg, we had the band stretching it on the sideline. Thought he could have kept playing, but why risk it? Put Al Horford, as he said, back in. But you don't know how he's going to react to anything. We saw his value certainly in game 1. I think it's one of those 3. And quite honestly, I think I would probably, if I were to list them in order of who I think the value pick certainly is Holiday. But if I were to list an order of who I think in order of who would get it, I would go Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum would be my 3, the way I would put it. How I pick.
We mentioned Luka Doncic before. You would have Jason Tatum in front of Luka Doncic right now in terms of that, because we're talking about Luka in terms of like 2017 LeBron James and that series where it was the gentleman sweep by the Golden State Warriors, but he was just so undeniably a man on an island working alone. I think that was the year that Love and Kyrie were both hurt going into the finals, so it was basically just LeBron and the Pips, and he still almost made it work. Would you think about Luka that highly if he keeps up the level of play we've had through 2 games?
Not in a gentleman's sweep, a sweep or a gentleman's sweep. I think it would have to go at least 6 to even and to even start that conversation, quite honestly. I just don't think you can do it on 4 games, or certainly not a sweep. And I don't even think a gentleman's sweep you could do it as well. Now, he's the best player of both teams, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about MVP performance of the series. So, yeah, 4 or 5 games, I don't think there's any way he wins that. If you get to 6 and possibly 7, if they can make that miraculous comeback, then I could see it being a possibility, because if that happens, well, I mean, the role players are going to have to step up a little more, but he's still going to have to be that dominant player.
By the way, just point of parliamentary procedure before I get to your Claudia. It was not the 2017 finals where everyone was hurt, and I think LeBron James is finals MVP. I think that was one of those other years around there, but you guys know what I'm talking about. So, Claudia, I apologize.
That's okay. You didn't even have to say that. We would have believed you anyways. You're very believable, GoJo. I do want to ask you guys, because I know we talked about this, but I want to know if your minds have changed, because 5 games is the favorite right now for this series to go, so a gentleman's plus 205, but 4 games, a sweep, not too far behind at plus 240. Then interestingly enough, 7 games is the next shortest and 6 games is the longest odds, all relatively close. But are we going 5? Anybody going to dabble with the 4 and go a sweep at plus 240, Senior?
I'm probably not going to go a sweep. I think Dallas can get 1 at home. I would go 5, probably the way it's going right now. Let's see how much the role players can step up at home. Could they actually take the 2 at home? That would be, boy, they do that, well, all of a sudden our show starts to get tweaked a little bit of what we're talking about. But I would probably go with the 5 number.
I think 5 is the right number here. I do think Dallas is going to get 1 of these at home, and it'll probably be game 3. That team played a ton better defensively on the road. We know we talked about Boston's shooting night being poor in a vacuum, but a lot of that was caused by the Dallas Mavericks closing out a lot better, doing a lot better, and being more active on that end. And we know in the postseason, we see it year after year, how much that home court advantage shifts in favor of shooters like PJ Washington and the rest of the guys in the Mavericks that haven't been playing well so far. I don't see 3 stinkers in a row for Kyrie Irving either. So I say they'll get 1 in here. But as we've discussed, unless the Kristaps injury is a lot worse than anyone's made it out to be on their side, because I do think the defensive tone, especially he sets when he's on the court, has been really important at the beginning of these games as they've frustrated Kyrie and these other guys at the start. Unless that's the case, I do think they are just too big, too strong, too fast, and especially too deep for this Dallas Mavericks team overall. So we'll see as we turn the page on that series and it heads back to Dallas. But coming up next, we got ink drying in Steel City. Mike Tomlin is going to continue to reign as the Steelers head coach. What went into that decision, and what's the 2024 outlook looking like on Carson Street? We'll check in there next on GoJo and Golic.
Anyone?
Mike, you have a year left on your contract.
Oh, how times they have changed here. Just months removed from that moment. Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin, yesterday it was announced, signed an extension with the team that will have him coaching the Steelers through 2027. Again, a place that's had fewer coaches than we've had popes in the same amount of time, continues to value that stability. For more on what's going on over on the south side of Pittsburgh, we're delighted to bring in the voice that was on the other end of that interaction here, ESPN NFL reporter covering the Steelers, Brooke Pryor, kind enough to join us now here. And Brooke, how does it feel now seeing all of this happen just a few months removed from that?
You know, it's surprising and it's not surprising all at once. I think it is not surprising at all that Mike Tomlin has a contract extension. It is a little surprising, though, that it was another 3-year deal. I think that there was a thought that maybe this was a shorter term extension that the two sides would work out, something that benefits both. You know, Mike Tomlin could potentially hit free agency earlier as a coach, something that he's never done. And the Steelers have a little bit more control while this organization is kind of at a crossroads. I mean, they've made some significant changes this offseason to try to get back to having some playoff success, because for all of the regular season success that Mike Tomlin has had, he still hasn't won a playoff game since 2016. So that's something that if you polled the crowd here around the south side, the fans, the city of Pittsburgh, they are well aware of, and they are not thrilled about it.
I guess also, Brooke, on the surprising side, because of the talk that went on after the season, especially in that wide receiver room about was Mike Tomlin kind of losing control is the wrong word, but some of the actions by the players that we heard just didn't seem Mike Tomlin-like. So it did seem like, was it coming to an end there? How serious was that?
You know, I don't think that he or the locker room ever felt like Mike Tomlin himself was losing control. I think that it was a situation where he's realizing that he has to evolve with the times, that he is coaching different players than he was coaching 10 years ago. George Pickens is kind of the face of this new wave of wide receivers and of players in the locker room that, you know, I think have different maybe motivations, attitudes, demeanors, ways that you want to coach them and get through to them. And this is Mike Tomlin, I think, trying to figure out which buttons he has to push. But I would say that the bulk of the noise that he is burned out, or maybe he's going to take a step away from the organization, that was all external speculation. People inside the building in Pittsburgh never believed that he was going anywhere, even before this extension was done. And I think that you need to look no further than how the players feel about him than to look at the NFLPA report card, the survey that they did of players in that locker room, where Mike Tomlin got an A. The rest of the team and the organization didn't get great marks in some areas, including ownership, but Mike Tomlin is a solid A. And talking from everyone to Justin Fields, who's been here for just a couple months, to Cam Hayward, who's been here, feels like as long as Tomlin, not quite as long, but over a decade. I mean, across the board, he is a player's coach and they all love him.
So with that in mind, what have the changes looked like, and how has it, if at all, changed as we get into and through OTAs and now into mandatory minicamp this week? Have you noticed any differences from Mike Tomlin or the approach this season so far?
You know, Mike Tomlin himself is the same. That's what he kind of prides himself on, at least that we see externally. But one thing that I think is interesting is that they do have a new stretching and warm-up system, which is, it feels so minor, right? If you're not at OTAs, at practice every day, you wouldn't think anything of it. But Cam Hayward missed the first 2 weeks of OTAs. The first day that he came back, one of the first things he mentioned was, you know, things are the same as they always have been around here, but we've got this new stretching thing, and that's kind of different. These guys are also doing Nordic curls at the end of practice. I mean, there are little things, I think, that are going on that kind of signal a shift in maybe some of the approaches that are an undercurrent to some of these bigger things that have happened. Obviously, I mentioned Justin Fields. They've also hired Arthur Smith as offensive coordinator, brought in Russell Wilson. Oh, by the way, Patrick Queen on the other side of the ball. I mean, I think that this is a team that has made some pretty significant big-time moves, but they also are doing these little things, I think, to try to tweak the method, tweak some things that are going on in the preseason, in the offseason to get back to the playoffs and get back to a win in the playoffs. And hopefully those little things in combination with some of these bigger moves lead to, some success that they haven't had in almost a decade, which is a crazy sentence to say.
So you mentioned Justin Fields. We talked about how he's in Pittsburgh, looking back at Chicago, saying, where were all those weapons when I was there? Now he goes to Pittsburgh, and Brooke, I'll ask that same question. Where the hell are the weapons? I mean, you got Pickens, you lose Deontay Johnson, you draft a wide receiver in the 3rd round from Michigan, Roman Wilson. Your second leading receiver was a running back. The ball doesn't go very far down the field. So you're bringing Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Who the hell are they throwing the ball to?
That is a great question. Probably the biggest one behind who the starting quarterback will be, although at this point it kind of feels like a foregone conclusion that that's going to be Russell Wilson. This is Russell Wilson's team. But I think that the guy that we are not talking about enough is Pat Freiermuth, the tight end. Arthur Smith loves tight ends. That is his thing. Pat Freiermuth is thrilled to have Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator. Darnell Washington is thrilled to have Arthur Smith. And I think this offense as a whole, because the gap from wide receiver 1 with George Pickens to the Van Jefferson, Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin kind of conglomeration of wide receivers, that's a pretty large gulf. And so I think the hope is that they're able to kind of use Pat Freiermuth as another receiving weapon. He was hurt for a lot of last year, kind of in and out of the lineup. But when he was healthy, he went off against the Bengals. And I think they want and hope that they can recreate and kind of channel some of that. But short of trading for Brandon Ayuk, which, I mean, gosh, the Steelers fans would love that so much. I don't see that actually happening and coming to fruition. As exciting as it would be, I think that the guys they have on this roster, kind of the guys they're going to have, I think they're going to have to get creative and look for those weapons somewhere else. And by the way, not only does Arthur Smith like tight ends, the run game is going to be a significant part of this offense. Hiring Arthur Smith was about a commitment to the run game in Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. And so while, yes, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields would love to have more weapons to throw to, this offense is going to flow through the trenches, kind of lessening the need for a strong wide receiver too.
Brooke, only about a minute left here, but you've mentioned Russell Wilson a couple of times here so far looking like his team. What have the early reviews of Russell Wilson and that relationship with Arthur Smith looked like over in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a good working relationship between those guys. I think the interesting take that I've heard from so many players about working with Russell Wilson is how detail-oriented he is. And the same goes for Justin Fields, but you can really see Russell Wilson in the way that he kind of over-communicates right now in a good way with his receivers, tight ends, quarterback, or running backs, all of these different guys, because they're learning a new system, because they're trying to get on the same page with Arthur Smith. And one thing that I think is helping Russell Wilson, the quarterbacks, get on the same page with their offensive coordinator is the influx of Arthur Smith guys that have been added to this offense. I mean, not only did they add Michael Pruitt and Scotty Miller, also Cordarrelle Patterson, Van Jefferson spent some time with the Falcons. So if you have shaken hands with Arthur Smith, congratulations, you may be a Pittsburgh Steeler by the time training camp rolls around. And that's helping some of these guys get more integrated with that system.
A good flow chart for Steelers fans to keep handy as we approach the 2024 NFL season. Brooke, we can't thank you enough for the time and insight as always. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon as we march toward the regular season.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brooke.
All right. Well, it's going to be one of the most fascinating situations in the NFL, Dad. Russell Wilson, so much improvement last year. Arthur Smith back in the coordinator chair after a failed head coaching stint. And from here on out, can they all make it work together? That's going to be the question over on the south side of Pittsburgh there. Will Justin Fields have any sort of role in this? We'll find out next time on Dragon Ball Z. But coming up next, we'll take a look at the Cup. The Florida Panthers, a 2-0 lead in that series as well. Does Houston have any chance to make this a series? Next on GoJo Golic.
Panthers took a 2-0 lead over Edmonton Monday night, a 4-1 win. Florida didn't allow a single high-danger shot attempt at even strength. Oilers, which was one of the best power plays in the regular season, went 0 for 4. Sergei Bobrovsky, just 18 saves, but that's because he didn't see many shots. However, the bad news, Panthers captain Alexander Barkov didn't play the final 9 minutes, 28 seconds after taking a high hit from Leon Draisaitl, who only got a 2-minute roughing penalty. Here's what head coach Paul Maurice had to say about a postgame.
Paul, I do want to ask you about the evolution defensively of this team since you've arrived, but just quickly, because I think you're holding back. How do you feel about the hit on Barkov?
This isn't the Oprah Winfrey Show. My feelings don't matter.
What a reply. What a question and what a reply, GoJo.
I feel like you're holding back. You're just not giving me enough right now. It felt like couples.
Are they dating? Yeah.
I just feel like you've been so distant lately.
Such a weird scenario. And obviously he's going to be mad, and he only got 2 minutes for the hit. And if you watch it in slow-mo, it was definitely an avoidable contact, and he carried through with it, got a little elbow to the face. So you hope that he's okay. I just looked up. There's no update yet on whether Barkov will be available, but it didn't look like a nice hit. It was certainly avoidable, so I understand why Maurice is mad, Senior.
Well, I mean, listen, you do a hit like that, you can drive through someone. You see him lift, and you see the elbow come up and catch him right in the chin. So got the 2-minute roughing. We'll see how Barkov is going to be. We have no idea. And then what is the league going to do to Draisaitl, if anything? I mean, I think he'll be fine. I don't see them suspending him for a game because it's hockey. So I don't see that happening. I do see his paycheck being a little bit lighter because, that was a hit. And Draisaitl tried to make it look, there are hits you do on a field in contact sports that you try and get away with things with just little shots. But there's just, you just saw him, like I said, lift a little bit, elbow went a little bit high into the face, and he's just not going to, certainly got to penalize, not going to get away with that one by the league either for a fine.
I was going to say, that was textbook football targeting right there. That was launching from a crouched position to the head or neck of a defenseless receiver. You can call that one a mile away, and any official in college football will tell you you're going to get sat down for the rest of the game. So that wouldn't be surprising to anybody there. You hope Barkov's okay because, again, as a part of this defense for Florida that we've been talking about here, Claudia, and you've been talking about for a while, just smothering last night the way they were all over this Oilers team who got one past Bobrovsky early on kind of a chippy. And then after that, it was a lot. I mean, chippy was a great way to describe this entire game because there was a bunch of hits early on, including a penalty that thankfully didn't arise into further injury early in that game, but a lot of 4-on-4 hockey in this one. That's where McDavid almost got loose later on here. But ultimately, and Claudia, you've been following the NHL much more than Dad or I this season, but this was the scouting report on Florida coming into this, just overwhelming defense tip to tip on the ice. And so far we've seen them be able to stymie what's been a prolific Oilers offense and make it look relatively easy so far this series.
Yeah, gritty and defense. And over the past few years, we've seen that's usually what wins you a Stanley Cup, right? We talk about defense winning championships in basketball even. We talk about the importance of pitchers when it comes to being down the stretch in the World Series. And that's what it comes down to for this Panthers team. If Sergei Bobrovsky's head doesn't fall off from standing on it, then yes, they are going to win this, despite how good this Oilers offense has been. Because their goaltending is a little bit of a concern, their defense hasn't showed up much. And also it's just a very fast-paced game. And when Florida is bringing you up and down, which the Oilers can keep up with, the issue is if they're hitting you hard like they have been and you're not able to get shots on the net, it's very simple. That's what it comes down to in hockey. If you're not getting a high volume of shots on net and you have a good goalie that you're going up against, you're not going to win. So as much as I really, truly did want to see Edmonton come out of this, and we talked about yesterday with John Buchagras saying that McDavid's not quite looking like the McDavid, although, he had an assist here, so he had a point. Yep. He looked all right. The shots were there for him here. If he's not being the best player in the world, then yeah, it's probably going to be the Panthers series for sure.
Yeah, McDavid had kind of a breakaway. I know Chuck was bugging him the whole way on that breakaway, and then Bobrovsky stopped it. You look at kind of the scoring. Draisaitl and McDavid have had, in the two games, have had 15 shots and no goals. And Evan Rodriguez has had 3 shots in 2 games and 3 goals. He had one in the first game. He scored 2 goals in the third period. Then they had an empty netter to make it 4-1. So you mentioned it, though. I mean, even with a high volume, Claudia, in game 1, Bobrovsky was standing on his head, and didn't let any in out of the 32 shots. So I thought once Edmonton, Mike got that first goal last night, I'm all right. They broke the ice there. They got one past them. Let's see where this thing goes. And, that we see where it ended up.
I will say the injury to Barkov is going to be huge because as I'm looking at their log sheet for the postseason, he's tied with Tkachuk right now for the points, but he has 13 assists. So defense does matter, and that might be the key here, but offense is certainly generated by him. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that one for sure.
Absolutely. Definitely one to watch there because this defense, to put a bow on just how dominant they've been. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Zach Hyman combined for 145 goals during the regular season, 35 through the first 3 rounds of the postseason so far, and have 0 through the first 2 games of the Stanley Cup final against this Florida unit there. And as great as these guys are, at some point with a goalie like this, it feels like you're trying to fit the puck through a keyhole, let alone while you've got these guys harassed. And you mentioned Tkachuk going down there with McDavid. He went full 5-hole on him with the stick there to get up and get active. And it's just kind of emblematic of what this Florida team's been. You saw the rats all over the ice, and it seems like they're getting ready to avenge what happened last year against the Golden Knights, the way that they've been going here right now. Love, too, last night was the Charles Barkley appearance. Charles now fresh off telling everybody that he's looking for a job over the course of the NBA Finals. He gets up there during the halftime desks and dodges a bunch of questions about his future. I didn't see what outlet it was with where he dropped an F-bomb into a hot mic here. Charles Barkley just continues to live the life that he wants to live in publicly. As we've seen, a guy who always, especially during some of the NBA Finals or NBA postseason years where the games have been boring as hell in Charles's estimation, he's just taken over and hijacked the Inside the NBA guest to talk about hockey whenever he wants to. As he's pointed out, he's just a big-time fan who doesn't know anything but loves going out here and talking about the sport.
I love when they bring them on the hockey set like they did. I just love that. I mean, because they could care less about actually talking hockey with him, or he'll have fun doing it for how much he does know about it. But here there was actually the talk of what are you going to do, and he had the joke, I'm on LinkedIn. I put it on my resume, and looking for that job. And listen, by the way, everybody in the world is going to be after him. Right. I mean, but the tough part is in a transition to Barkley now is you just can't recreate what these guys have. If it truly is split up and these guys all kind of go their own way. Barkley is a great personality. People always ask me in my years at ESPN, who was the best guest you ever had? I always say it was Barkley. He's just great to have on. But there's just something with the chemistry of all those guys. Barkley certainly would still be exceptional on his own. But, man, that whole team, if they truly are done and split up after next year, that's going to be a shame.
Barkley being there for this game, somewhat ominous because I do think, and we talked about this with John Buccigross a bit yesterday relative to how this team is structured for the Edmonton Oilers, is kind of looks down the path we could be talking about for Connor McDavid, where he could be one of the all-time greats to never actually win a cup, because this looks like his best opportunity, at least in Edmonton, with the way this team is structured before the Draisaitl contract becomes a factor, him going into the last year of his deal, and the decision that team is going to have to make opposite him. Could we be looking at a guy who, you see it pop even last night, we talked about it, the speed on the ice, the puck handling, all these things that have made him so prolific, even if he's playing banged up right now, to all of a sudden be grappling with the reality that, I don't know, the Florida Panthers team, they were able to work their way back in here after the heartbreak of last season. Not sure if this Edmonton team is going to be capable of that said same thing, not capitalizing on what seems like their best opportunity now. And could that be, again, Dad, we've talked about this, it's not as damning when we talk about it in other sports as it is in the NBA rings culture, but still absolutely something to keep an eye on. Speaking of chemistry, though, coming up next, let's add one of the best to our bunch here. Charlotte Wilder joins us next here on GoJo and Golic. right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato. And it's Tuesday, which means we get to go four wide and welcome in our friend, good buddy, and co-host of Oddball with Amin El Hassan, Charlotte Wilder, in the building now here for a Wilder Wednesday on a Tuesday. And Charlotte, how you doing, bud?
I'm great. The Celtics are up 2-0. I have amazing intro music, which somehow always surprises me, even though I think we've had it for a while now. I'm back in New York, and, it's spring or almost summer, I guess. Gojo, life is good. Life is really good.
I was going to say, Charlotte, because you've got an extra pep in your step, I wondered what it was like coming back home to Boston, going to TD Garden, and after a postseason full of anxiety and stress about this Celtics team actually getting over the hump, watching them dominate through 2 games. They've looked basically indestructible. How do you feel?
I know, right? It's pretty cool. Honestly, it's funny that you're saying that, Mike, because right before I signed on, I was thinking about after the Pacers series, after the Eastern Conference Finals, and Claudia, you were nervous, and I was putting on a bit of a show that I wasn't nervous, because it just, it had felt like everything was deceptively simple. And I think what I took away from watching those first 2 games was, first of all, look, like the Bucks were down 0-2 to the Suns in a past finals, 2020, 2021. 21. And then the Suns came back and won 4 in a row. So I want to preface this by saying that this is by no means, this is not over. This is not a done deal. Like, this is why basketball series are 7 games, because you just don't know what's going to happen. I just feel like maybe this whole time the Celtics have been unbelievable, and you might say historically good. And it has just felt either too good to be true, or there have been these blips that haven't made sense. And watching those past 2 games, guys, I was like, I don't know what Dallas can do, because the style of basketball that they play, which is get Luka to the paint, and make sure that there are those lob passes for the big centers. Like, what do you do? How do you fix that? Like, you can't completely change your identity mid-finals, but maybe they should try that. I don't know. Has it felt as dominant to you guys as it has to me, or am I brainwashed by caring about this team?
No, it has felt pretty dominant, just because Luka's getting no help from any of his teammates. Quickly, you mentioned the Bucks in 21. Only 5 teams in NBA history have come back from a 2-zip deficit in the finals: 69 Celtics, 77 Blazers, 06 Heat, 16 Cavs, and 21 Bucks. So, yes, it has happened a handful of times. I don't think many people think Dallas can do that. On the other side, again, Charlotte, for the Boston Celtics fans, which are an interesting group, are they now in their quest to always find something to complain about? Will they be upset if this isn't a sweep now?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you'd have to have a real screw loose to be upset if the Celtics win a final and it's not I think so. I mean, I think that honestly, if the Celtics lose game 3, I think there will be a sky is falling moment, because I think that anytime the Celtics lose, it rattles people to their core, because the Celtics don't lose that much, and they don't have very many close games. They haven't had very many close games this season. So I think, Senior, anytime there's a loss, yes, you're probably right. Some people will be like, oh, well, it wasn't a sweep. I think no matter what, they're going to be, this was too easy talking points. I think they'll say, oh, well, no, Luka's hurt. And I think at a certain point, you've got the better team. Maybe. I don't know. I feel like I'm jinxing this entire situation now, guys.
I'm stitious too, Charlotte, but I think you're okay. And you're right. I was nervous, but I was nervous thinking that it was going to be Luka and Kyrie. And Gojo said earlier, and I have to agree, I don't think he'll put up 3 stinkers, but I also don't think Jason Tatum's going to be as quiet as he has been. And I don't think Drew Holiday is going to be the best player on the team like he was in game 2. So, yes, Celtics fans are usually going to have something to complain about, but I think it's sort of known, like if Luka remains to be Luka, then they can probably get one win, especially if Porzingis is banged up or doesn't play in game 3. Any more than one, though, anything other than a gentleman's sweep, then yes, sky is falling, Celtics still stink, blah, blah, blah.
Well, then it just allows all the old demons back in. I think it's less about the number, because I think as long as you guys leave with the championship, everything feels good again and all the past sins are forgiven. And where a season where the dominance has been so steady that Charlotte's right, any sort of crack in that just reminds you of what you used to be. And that's not what you are this year. This year, what they've been, and that's through the playoffs. I get that they faced a bunch of banged up teams, and that absolutely deserved to be a topic of conversation. But let's call it what it is. They've beaten everyone over the heads for the entirety of this season. This is who they've been, especially with Kristaps back on the court. Like, Charlotte, I felt like you'd appreciate this. The one thing that kept popping up in my mind was this Celtics team is like an octopus. Like, octopus very famously have 8 brains. They have a brain in each of their tentacles so they can operate independently and get things done more efficiently. And that's how this Boston team operates, where, yeah, if one part is more focused on during that night, well, everyone else is capable of stepping up. You can get Drew Holiday doing that. You get Kristaps coming back in and affecting the game defensively, shooting over everybody offensively the way he has, and Jaylen Brown stepping up and looking like the best player on this team. It's kind of impossible to stop any one of them the way the depth of this team has been structured, and that depth has shined through more and more through this postseason. Yes, the teams they have faced have been banged up, but that is yet another thing that's a testament to what they've done, what Brad Stevens has done, building a team that is such a depth-fueled war machine that they could survive this same gauntlet.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think to me, the moment that I was like, oh my God, I have not seen this in a long time, was when Tatum was just not hitting anything. He couldn't shoot. He was missing every three. I was like, please don't take any more threes. And then he just, you could almost see it happen. He just completely switches and starts getting outlets to all these other guys, and mostly feeding Drew Holiday. And Drew said in his postgame presser, he was like, I just tried to stay in his field of vision. I just tried to stay visible so that he had me to go to. And I think that that is just such brilliant team basketball. And I think that there's something a little bit confusing to people in this modern era where it's like, well, if your stars aren't starsing, then how are you winning? And it's like, well, because you have this team where, as you said, Gojo, any given night, these other guys can step up. And when you listen to them in these post-game pressers, I have to say they're all very earnest, and they all keep stressing the importance of the team. And I believe them. I really believe them. I don't think that you get here looking the way they look if you really don't have this team mission that everybody seems to have bought into. I mean, there's something sort of it's like kumbaya. There's like a whole vibe there that is really impressive. And I think people don't believe because they keep trying to say, oh, well, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown hate each other. And it's like, well, don't you think we'd like know that by now if that were really true? You know, so I think that the team spirit of this group and the ability to step forward and do what other guys can't is sort of a, you know, not to sound corny, it's sort of a beautiful thing.
Yeah, listen, if you do what work together like it and it leads to wins, then that's what you do. And that's, their passing is incredible. I quickly have to go back, Mike, because maybe I just didn't pay enough attention in school. Octopus does have 9 brains, 1 between the eyes and a mini one in each tentacle. I didn't know that. Also has 3 hearts. Did you know it has 3 hearts? I didn't know that.
I did know it has 3 hearts. I think they also have blue blood. I think that's also the difference in that.
They have 9 brains, 3 hearts, and blue blood. I mean, I knew about the blood. I didn't know about 3 hearts and 9 brains. I mean, I've learned something today.
Talk about Dan Hurley, am I right?
Oh,
sorry. Is UConn a blue blood? I don't know.
I think we can.
I want to get there with you in a second, actually, because I have a question more about the Lakers in this entire process than anything else. But I think the one last thing, just because you were in TD Garden, that I'm curious about, and you were the one that we talked about on the front end of this that said, oh no, Kyrie Irving is public enemy number 1. How did that interaction between crowd and Kyrie and its effect live up to what you expected going into the series through 2 games?
I think I was pleasantly surprised in game one. I understand people in Boston hating Kyrie. I personally find it a little boring when it's just constant and, every time he has the ball, there's booing, which sure, I get. But I think I was happy that the cheers for the Celtics were louder than the boos for Kyrie. I think that's how I would put it. I do think, though, that as the games went on, and as it became clear that Kyrie was not having the games that people have come to expect of Kyrie when he's playing his best, that the boos got louder, the Kyrie sucks chants were, ping-ponging back and forth the garden. I will say that Celtics fans should probably work on that because it's sort of like a round, when you start row your boat and then row. It's like we gotta Kyrie.
Chant coordination is a difficult art. It really is. It can start to sound like a bad reverberation. It's just not great.
No, it takes a little finesse. So I think maybe that could be improved upon. But I think that the dominance of the Celtics has somehow made the hatred of Kyrie take a little bit of a backseat. But I think people still hate him. I mean, they're selling some, they're selling T-shirts outside that have Kyrie's name on it, and not in a positive way, I would say. So
I was gonna say they're not cute ones that Kyrie and his family will be partaking in as well. So that definitely lived up to the hype. Charlotte, you mentioned the Dan Hurley of it all. Obviously, the biggest news coming into today. What I wanted to ask you to start is the thing that's kind of been ringing in my head, and I was trying to ask Lakers fans about this yesterday. Should the Lakers be embarrassed about the way that this played out in public for them?
I feel like that's a layered question because I think that there were a lot of different things going on. I think the fact that Danny Hurley now has a deal coming up with UConn is helpful for Danny Hurley. I think that, embarrassed is an interesting word, Mike, because the Lakers are in a spot right now, and I think I said this with you guys last week, where if I were Danny Hurley, if I were any coach coming from a winning spot, Danny Hurley off of 2 championships, there's no way that I would take that job. And you guys were talking about, the bright lights of the Lakers. This is one of the best jobs in sports. How do you not take this job? And I feel like Danny Hurley is playing the long game in terms of his coaching ambitions. I think he thinks that he can win again. Alex Caravan is coming back to UConn. I think he thinks that they can do it 3 times. And if you get a $70 million offer from the Lakers after 2 championships, what do you get after 3? I think that to coach in these high stress environments, you need to have complete confidence in yourself. I think Danny Hurley does. I also think that he's able to look at a roster and say, where am I? What am I walking into? And am I walking into a situation where I can actually coach? I just don't see how a coach like Danny Hurley, who is so college, who, whips 17 to 23-year-olds into shape, and LeBron James are going to be the right fit. And so I don't know that I would be embarrassed if I were a Lakers fan because he turned down the job. I think I might be embarrassed because, what does this roster become with LeBron? I just don't see this as, when you look at all of the other teams, not just in the NBA, in the West, you look at the Lakers roster, I just don't see this having the legs to get them where everybody wants to go, which is a championship with LeBron again.
It always makes the decision easier, too, when your spouse says, no, we're staying on the East Coast because I like it on the East Coast better. I
can't blame her. I would have said that. I would have been like, LA, no, I'm good. I'm near my family. I have a nice little house in Connecticut. Well, it's probably big. I get it.
I was gonna say it's probably not in stores either, because while I called Connecticut home for many years, there are a lot of redeeming parts about it. Even people that went to UConn will tell you Storbs. And listen, South Bend, Indiana, not the most beautiful place on earth.
Yes.
I am talking about this from the glass house. I understand that, but Stores versus Los Angeles, a little bit of a different thing unless you're living with the kind of money in the part of the state that I'm sure Danny Hurley and his wife are living in there. But Dad, I do think that's an interesting thing. And we kind of talked about this some from just the basketball opportunity standpoint. If you want to ignore, was this a leverage play by Danny Hurley to try and get more of what he wanted at and for UConn here? Charlotte is right. The current structure of the Western Conference right now and where you sit at that, if you're the Lakers, even though they've got a summer opportunity to potentially bring in another star here, that's an uphill battle and a totally different coaching dynamic that Charlotte talked about. People saying, yeah, Dad, you talked about it. The NBA teams wanting to go more in on program building, keeping these cores together. That's not really what it's going to be with the Lakers right now. It's still, hey, LeBron James is the sun and the moon there until further notice, and you've got to adjust your style, which Danny Hurley's even said, I need to mature on and change if I want to coach in the NBA. And that would probably be the starkest place or starkest change you could imagine going from there to this Los Angeles Lakers team in particular.
Yeah, entry level in LA is going to be a little different than what he's going to see in 2 years there, right? Of what that roster is now and what it's going to be a couple of years from now. And Charlotte mentioned it, and we all know this, when you're at that level, the confidence you have, you can get the job done, because we're all saying, oh man, is this going to be his best opportunity now lost of getting into the NBA? And we said, well, if he wins another title, it sure as hell won't be, or he'll get to another team at some point that may be in a better position of the way the NBA teams are structured today. But I guess Charlotte, going back to this, what do the Lakers do now? Where do they go in this?
I mean, but first of all, Senior, I totally agree. And I do understand that the Lakers have historically focused on player development, and they were probably looking for that from Danny Hurley. They were looking beyond LeBron to do that. I also think that, GoJo, you're grinning.
No, guys, I'm sorry. This thing just exploded into my brain when you and Dad were talking about the timing of this, and now I can't get it out of my head. You mentioned Danny Hurley goes back, wins another championship here. I think there is another team in a massive market who's a prestige franchise who could also stylistically fit the way that he coaches, but use a little bit of an influx maybe in a year's time. I guess this would be 2026 or 2025 New York Knicks head coach Danny Hurley. That's what I can't get out of my brain right now. Tom Thibodeau goes, grinds it for another year. They fall short of what we saw this last season from the Knicks. They decide they need some new blood in there. Danny Hurley and his wife get to stay on the East Coast. He is a guy that comes in and has that intensity that pairs well with Jalen Brunson in the core of this roster, but he's not going to try and grind them down in the same way as Thibs. It's the same sort of energy with just a little bit of a different twist and a younger version, and now all of a sudden you've got a championship contending Knicks team. Boom.
GoJo, you are closer to New Jersey, the Villanova Knicks, if there's any team in the NBA that's like a college team. And when I tell you that my Knicks fan husband last night or yesterday, when Danny Hurley turned down the job, looked at me and said, you think he'd coach the Knicks? You are not the first person to have this thought. And I think that there are a lot of Knicks fans thinking, and look, Tibbs is that they love Tibbs here right now until all of the players' legs fall off again. Yeah. I think you're onto something. I think you're also, I also do think that the East Coast thing cannot be overstated. As someone deeply from the Northeast, sure, a lot of money would probably get me to LA, but also a lot of money on the East Coast would make me stay on the East Coast much more so than going to LA. And they already have a lot of money on the East Coast. So there's a lifestyle thing involved. What can we say?
There's a lifestyle thing involved here. There is the symmetry of the Mike Krzyzewski offer from back in the day for the Los Angeles Lakers that pairs well in this. There's the insider on insider crime. Dad, it's been a fascinating weekend in sport with this.
It goes back to what I said before, is we don't know what's in everybody's mind. Is it money? Is it geography? Is it team? Is it comfort? You don't know, because we've had people here talking about, the proximity and what you just said, Charlotte. I wouldn't leave the East Coast. I couldn't get out of Connecticut fast enough. When I was done at ESPN, I couldn't get out of the East Coast quick enough. In all honesty,
well, you weren't from there though.
Oh no, that's what my point. That's what I'm saying. That's why for each person, it's a different scenario on why you want to be somewhere, and geography can be a pretty important part of it.
Yeah.
Geography can absolutely be an important part of this. There's no doubt. So the Danny Hurley saga, we'll see how that ends with the UConn number eventually coming from this. But coming up next, speaking of numbers, let's talk the WNBA and how Caitlin Clark gives us all what we really want, a chance to talk about ourselves. Next on GoJo Golic.
Welcome back into hour 2 of GoJo and Golic. The WNBA announced yesterday that 400,000 fans attended games in May, the largest attendance in 26 years. The last time that many fans were there, 1999, just the third year of the league. Many crediting that, of course, to the arrival of this rookie class, including Caitlin Clark. And speaking of Clark, they took another beating, 89-72 win for the Sun against the Fever. At one point, they were leading as many as 28 points. Caitlin Clark only put up 10 points. Now we talk about this because she did just drop 30 against Washington after getting the news that she didn't make Team USA. And Charlotte, we talked about this a lot on the show. I'm very curious to hear your take on this whole entire situation. And as we know, everyone's going to look at this one game, despite her dropping 30 the prior game, and say, this is why she didn't make the team.
Yeah, no, she didn't make the team because the team is a process that to make, it's like a 3-year process. They start building these athletes have played together on the FIBA World Cup in the Olympics before. Diana Taurasi coming back to try to win her 6th gold. Like there are chemistry aspects to this. Caitlin Clark is an amazing player. I would never say otherwise. She is not the best player in the WNBA right now. She isn't. She's not. There are a lot of players who are more complete players than she is, who have been doing this for much longer, who have played together. I think this idea that because someone draws eyeballs, because someone has, quote, engagement, because someone has, quote, followers. We live in a world now where people think, oh, well, then they deserve it. They should be on everything. They should get everything. They're the reason. More people are watching, more attention. It's good. She should be on. It's like, that's not how sports works. Do you know how team sports works? It's not that you get picked because you've got a lot of followers on Instagram. It's not that. I understand bringing eyeballs to this league, and what Caitlin has done is incredible. I am not discounting that. I'm just saying that cannot be the only thing we're talking about in the NBA. We should also be talking about the fact, sure, she had 10 points against the Sun. The Sun are unbelievable. The Sun have been absolutely lights out this year. And so I think when we talk about all of the WNBA and Caitlin Clark, yes, obviously I think that the attention she has brought is great. We in the media need to also be like, and the Sun, like, I think that they're a little like, let's use these ins we have in popular culture right now, where Caitlin Clark is this flashpoint name. And, as GoJo said, a great way that everybody can say the things they feel about a lot of other things when talking about, quote, basketball. But then it's like, okay, let's flip this and talk about the basketball.
Well, that's it. I want to give the credit to that one. That was a tweet that I saw from Bomani Jones, who said, we're past using Caitlin Clark to talk about the W and to the part we all really wanted when we used the Caitlin Clark and the WNBA to talk about ourselves. Like, Dad, that's what this really has become, is because the WNBA is such a diverse and interesting league full of women from all different backgrounds, certainly women of all different races and creeds, and the way that those things intersect and people's strong feelings on all those subjects, it gives them the inroad to basically do whatever they want with this. And oh, by the way, because Caitlin Clark has been wholly inoffensive in the middle of all this. Like, she has said and done nothing to actually cause the kind of uproar and calamity that have followed her anywhere, but it's because she can be a proxy for whatever you want her to be at this point. And I feel bad for the young woman and really all the women in the middle of this, because every single night and every single game is not just a referendum on what happened that game. It is a referendum on women everywhere. It is a referendum on women in sports everywhere. And it is used as the grade and the final answer for the whole test rather than just another question along the way.
Yeah, well, listen, I agree. And Charlotte, I wonder if part of it is this is the most attention the W has ever gotten. So I wonder if we're in the stages of, now that it's where it is and there are so many fans parachuting in, now it's also getting dissected more than it ever has been by, quite honestly, a lot of people who just don't understand it, and some that do but are now just dissecting it for the first time because of the popularity for a sport, for a league that's been around for actually a long time.
Totally. I think, these are growing pains. These are natural things that happen when something becomes mainstream in a way that it hadn't been before. The W should have been long ago. I think, Adam Silver in his sort of State of the Union before the finals was like, this is, as you'll see in our business plan, I don't think we didn't think it would take this long. Like, it shouldn't have taken this long. But yeah, I think people, hopefully fans start to catch up and understand what's going on outside of the lens of a few people, a few athletes. I think obviously this rookie class, as you said, Claudia, Caitlin Clark, but Angel Reese, the history that came in there, the sort of way people have talked about this, we do need a course correction, and hopefully that comes as people get more invested in the league and in the players and stories outside of a couple flashpoints, which, as we know, is a tall ask these days, but which I'm hopeful for, because I think the product itself is so compelling, and the storylines are just absolutely fascinating outside of the rookie class as well.
Can we talk about something that is going to be compelling? And I saw someone mention this and had to look it up to make sure it was going to be true. July 20th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC. You guys know what's going to happen on that date?
What?
The WNBA All-Star Game is going to happen. You know what's happening at the WNBA All-Star Game? It's the All-Stars versus on the U.S. women's national team versus the remaining WNBA All-Stars.
Yeah.
you want to talk about potentially toxic discourse all around, where we'll find out then. I mean, based on current trajectory, Caitlin Clark's been top 15 in scoring in the league. She leads the Fever in every category but rebounds. Like, there's a non-zero chance, but at this point, it does seem much like being left off Team USA. She's probably not a WNBA All-Star at this point. But man, that's the one where, Charlotte, we've talked about so much of this, like, competition, you reward all of that. I do wonder if, for the eyeballs of it all, like, it would be horrific for everyone involved. But man, if you did have Caitlin Clark as part of the WNBA All-Stars going up against that Team USA roster, that is incredibly compelling.
I mean, like, look, it just makes me laugh because, like, imagining the discourse, it would go fully through the looking glass. Like, we would be in levels of galaxy brain discourse that I can't even imagine. I do think, though, look, like, the thing that I love about sports is the drama, obviously are the storylines. I've said this for years, that I think sports are the original and perhaps only true reality show. And we are certainly getting that, maybe more so than ever before in this WNBA discourse, because it's also sort of ugly, and a lot of the discourse around reality shows can also be like, but yeah, I mean, that is something that people will watch, Gojo. That is something that people will watch. And you know,
I feel bad for saying it, because the All-Star game should still be a reward that is earned. And that's what we talked about, is this isn't just reality television. We're not plucking it for all that. But at the same time, like, I don't know, I'm also a person who enjoys what that could be as theater, Dad. And there is a sick part of all of us that might be in that.
Listen, she might still make that, because remember, a lot of the All-Stars would have been the ladies that are on the U.S. Olympic team. They would have been the All-Stars. That is very true. As well.
It is so they're Olympic roster All-Stars.
Exactly. It's a non-Olympic roster All-Star team. So she very well may be on that. And that would be something to watch. But listen, what can you do now? You just tip your cap. I mean, the increase, you just go through the numbers of their increasing in the hundreds and hundreds of percentile in so many different categories of where this league has come. I still don't know if any publicity is good publicity, but it's in the spotlight right now, and I think it's great in some cases and it's a shame in other cases, because some people, I don't mean in the league, some people just don't know how to deal with it when they see a league like that in the spotlight.
This is the one for me. The WNBA's online merch store has already set a single season sales record. With 4 months left in the season, sales are up 756% compared to last year.
That's great.
Business is booming, and let's hope we all catch up to those numbers at some point in time. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Claudia Bellafato, and Charlotte Wilder here. You can catch Oddball with Charlotte and Amin El Hassan every day but Monday here on the DraftKings Network. Especially important during this NBA Finals run. Plenty of great insight and fun on that show there. And we will get to Charlotte's thoughts on what's going on in New England coming up this week as Tom Brady's New England Patriots Hall of Fame enshrinement ceremony is ready and set. And it's a very interesting run of events. And I'm very curious to hear how Charlotte thinks this is going to go, coming off the roast of Tom Brady and everything else we've seen in the lead up to this. But did want to wave hello to some of our potential new Swiftie fans around here. Yesterday was a weird day around the show here. Dad and I were talking about Travis Kelce cranking home runs in David Njoku's celebrity softball game. Travis Kelce, apparently first-time, long-time listener of the show here. We appreciate that, Travis. Tweeting in reply that got us sucked into the Taylor Swift fan universe there amongst my fellow Swifties, but at a higher level than we ever could have anticipated. Like getting aggregated by People magazine yesterday, as Travis is a great sport with everything that's gone on, as he has been during the entirety of this incredibly public relationship. It triggered something within you, Charlotte. You were texting me yesterday about a take that you wanted to get off in light of all this relative to the Taylor Swift universe. So we can alienate Dad and Claudia for just a second here, because I'm very curious. You and I haven't talked about this before.
Thank you so much for this platform. I'm honored to be here. Trav, what's up? Travis and I spent a lot of time together between like 2017 and 2019 when the Chiefs were not good and he was on Media Row. We had many great interviews. He was always very generous with his time. We rode a roller coaster together at the Mall of America. Normal stuff. I just want to say that I think But Daddy, I Love Him, the 6th song, I believe, off of the Georgia Post Department. I think this is a diss track about sports media. And I think this because when she put it together on the Eras Tour with So High School, which is definitely about Travis, I was like, oh, I think this song is about Travis. And I forgot how many people, when they started dating, were like, this is so awful. Like, and the cutting away to her at games and, you know, all these men being like, women shouldn't be shown on the screen at football games. Who's this pop star? And it was all so stupid. But also there were a lot of people in sports media, like giving these monologues about how Travis needed to not get involved with her, how it would be distracting, how it would be bad for him, how it would be bad for the Chiefs, how they wouldn't ever win with her there. And if you look at the lyrics of But Daddy, I Love Him, she's saying soon enough, the elders had convened down at the City Hall, and City Hall to me sort of feels like Twitter. Elders, you know, we've got some. Senior is one of the good ones. We do have some elder statesmen of sports media in this business. She also says the saboteurs protested too much. She also says performing sanctimonious soliloquies I'll never see. If that's not sports media, if that's not a TV on mute in an airport, I don't know what is. So I think that this whole song is about people in sports media not wanting Travis to date her. And I just wanted to put that out there, Trav. If you're listening, run it by Taylor, see what she thinks. Maybe a heart, maybe a little retweet, just, you know, something. Tell me if I'm off base here.
Yeah, you know what, Travis, don't retweet or touch any of this content if you are going to confirm that this is, in fact, the truth about But Daddy I Love It, which I always read as maybe a potential little brushback to even some of the core fan base and people who had been talking about this relationship in various ways online. But Charlotte, I like this read a lot more, that it's a direct shot at the new audience that's coming in, because before men didn't know how to talk about the WNBA the way that we have shown our ass on in the last few weeks, men had no idea how to talk about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's relationship all fall.
Also, Sarah's and Hannah's in their Sunday best, they were probably like, oh, who is, like, there were some women who were like, also all the wine moms are still holding out. They have a chance of Travis Kelce in their minds. I mean, I'm just saying, there are a lot of little things here. Sundays, football, just tossing that out there.
Starting to think about this. The wheels are turning after yesterday. So again, thank you to Travis Kelce for all of the fun yesterday there. A very interesting and exciting day. And before Dad and Claudia's heads explode here, Claudia, I'll pitch it over to you.
Let me just ask, Senior, do we feel like maybe we should try to hop on this train? I have to admit, I got a little nervous yesterday. Knowing that Travis, I don't know if he actually listens, but like the fact that he knows of the show, he loves you guys, like that's so great. I'm like, I need to be careful on what I'm saying. So I may become a Swiftie. Travis, if you're out there, if you want to hang out with me, I'd love to hang out with you and Taylor. I'll listen.
You want to hang out with me, Claudia?
If you want to hang out with me, I guess I can make it happen. I guess I'll start listening to Taylor Swift. So, Senior, I don't know. I feel like maybe we should just start.
I don't. Well, no. I don't know what defines it. I'm a big fan of her music.
Right,
so
okay.
if that makes me a Swiftie, okay, I'll be a Swiftie.
Okay.
But what I don't do is what Charlotte and Mike do. I don't deep dive.
Dissect.
I like the song, but I don't think about what it means. I just like the song. I sing along with the song. I enjoy the song. You know, I don't dive into the meaning of it. I love her music. I think her performances are incredible as well. And as far as, Travis jumping in on that, I always get a kick out of when I see Travis at a game or Jason at a game when I'm calling them. They're sitting there in their uniform and before the game and I say hi and they both call me Mr. Golic. I still have too many guys in the league calling me Mr. Golic. I'm like, guys, you call me Mike.
No, it's great.
I mean,
I love
go down that
road.
road. But I am a Swiftie. I am a Swiftie, but I'm just not to the depth of Charlotte and Mike as far as diving into the songs and the meaning and all the different things she wears or things she says or cue words or things like that. Man, I'm an inch deep and a mile wide. That's it.
It's like being a Swiftie is like being an NBA fan, really.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
No, being a Swiftie is like being the kind of NBA fan that lives on Reddit, where nothing is what's just happening on the surface. It is all about what's going on. And to my dad's point, this is the way my dad has the best relationship and I think the healthiest relationship with content in general of almost anyone I know, because my dad does. He just absorbs the content for exactly what it is there in the moment. And then as soon as he is done, it is over. I'll never forget, we went and saw Interstellar once together, me and my dad, because every guy basically is somewhat fascinated by space. And we walk out of that movie, and I am miles deep into posts about black hole theories and all the different things that they had going into that movie that were scientifically accurate and painstakingly done. And I'm sitting there at like 11:30 at night trying to have this conversation in the car with my dad, who I saw for a split second jerk the wheel like he was getting ready to end it all for both of us just to get out of that conversation.
Yeah, I want no part of that. I walked out of the movie and you know what? I liked it, I didn't like it, and I'm done with it. I move on to the next thing. I'm not jumping in any rabbit hole because I can't get out if I dive in.
Yeah. See, I am like that. I love diving into things. So I'm just making it official. I don't know if anybody cares, but I'm going to dig into the Taylor Swift album. I'm going to go on a run. I'm going to put it on, and I'll come back and let you guys know.
Well, you're going to have to start farther back than that, Claudia, to make all the connections between the Easter eggs. But, you got to start
Charlotte,
somewhere.
I'm trying, okay? Don't give me so much darn work. I'm trying out here.
Every single album, Nathan Hubbard, Nora Princiotti, it is, in my estimation, the Bible on the Taylor Swift universe. It can get you caught up to speed. Post haste on this and ready to go. Charlotte, quick, you've got a minute left. Tom Brady, Hall of Fame induction in New England. What are you most excited about happening in this event?
I mean, anytime Tom Brady goes back to New England, he swaggers in. Like I hope he runs around screaming, "Let's effing go," the way he did a little awkwardly when he came back to Gillette. I mean, I feel like he left and then wanted nothing to do with the Patriots. And now that he's actually retired, he is coming back like the returning conquering hero. He's like finger guns everywhere. He's like, "Hey, Mr. Kraft, thanks for having me." Like it's this, it's sort of like, he's like the Frank Sinatra of coming back to New England now, where it's just like a little bit swaggery, a little bit like also, I don't know why I said Frank Sinatra. That's just what came into my head. I'm excited. Okay. I hope, maybe it'll turn into another roast. It's his. That's sort of what I'm picturing. Isn't Bill Burr involved? I mean,
yeah, he is. He's the MC of the event. And Charlotte, I'm picturing Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man finger pistoling on the street when he's got a little bit of the venom in him in one of the most cringeworthy scenes in movie history. Because even Tom Brady showed everyone that last time when he came back that even the GOAT does not look cool as a grown man wearing a sports jersey tucked into jeans. All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. And if you missed that, you can catch the best of GoJo and Golic noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. And if you somehow missed that or our great guests, thank you to Brooke Pryor, ESPN NFL reporter covering the Steelers, talking about the Mike Tomlin extension with us today. And, of course, our friend Charlotte Wilder, one of the co-hosts of Oddball, her and Amin El Hassan, every day but Friday here on the DraftKings Network. If you miss any of that, you can get it wherever you get your podcast or right here as soon as we get done on YouTube. Let's get to this, guys. Discussion that popped up yesterday in our pre-show meeting chat on Gmail. The Sloppy Joe. Now, all credit on this one to our buddy Ricky Smith, Cleveland's very own TV writer and comedian, who tweeted out June 2nd, more restaurants need to put Sloppy Joes on their menu. And I have not been able to think about this since, but our producer Billy brought up a discussion. Are Sloppy Joes overrated, underrated, or properly rated in modern discourse, Dad?
I think Sloppy Joes are heavily underrated. I love Sloppy Joes. I love it when there's so much meat on the Sloppy Joe, you just eat it with a fork because you can't pick up the buns for a sandwich because it's so, dare I say the word, sloppy. So that's what I want, and I absolutely believe that should be in more restaurants. Absolutely underrated, which I don't think Claudia or Charlotte agree with me.
No. I fully, I'm on board. I have been enamored with Sloppy Joe since I saw The Parent Trap. That was the first time I'd ever seen a Sloppy Joe. There's a scene where they're eating them at camp, and I immediately went to my mom and I was like, "Why do we never have Sloppy Joes?" And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "I demand a loose meat sauce on bread right now." I didn't get it, but they hold a sort of. When you see someone eat something in a movie or a TV show, especially when you're a kid and you're like, that looks like the best thing I've ever seen. That's where Sloppy Joes are in my heart.
All I could focus on was Gojo's face and how this is like dirty talk for Gojo when you're like, yeah, you put the fork in the Sloppy Joe, and Gojo's just like, oh yeah.
Sloppy Joe is mildly pornographic in nature. It's what it is. It's a mildly pornographic.
It's good, man.
But to Charlotte's point about the entries, I think for a lot of people, maybe the reason the Sloppy Joe gets a bad rap is because I think for a lot of people, especially our age, the entry point was Billy Madison, where you got the lunch lady. I made him extra sloppy for you. I know how you kids like them nice and you know what? To be clear, I do like them nice and sloppy. But what I think we can have here is remember when Brussels sprouts had their glow up. Brussels sprouts agent went to work, put it with a little bit of the extra drizzle there, some bacon bits involved. We can do a couple of things here. There's enough space in the narrative universe for Sloppy Joes to exist in the form that we all love them in, big, messy, and loud at a lot of these restaurants. But I would love if some brave chef, some restaurateur at some high-profile place gave me a Sloppy Joseph. Let's get a little bit of an elevated Sloppy Joe experience mixed into that. Let's mix it up a little bit. I think we can have both exist in the world. That would make me very happy.
If you do sliders, are they Sloppy Joeys because they're little?
Now we're playing the game, Charlotte. Let's go.
Oh, I like that a lot. Claudia, quickly, I'd like you to break down that scene from Billy Madison because I'm sure you've seen that movie.
Oh, yeah. It's when the Mercedes Lewis entering his 19th season in the NFL signed a 1-year deal with the Bears on Monday. Just crazy stats coming out of this, guys. So he turned 40 on May 19th. He's the second oldest player in the NFL behind Aaron Rodgers. He now is the last active player from 2006 draft. Up against, he's going to be going now, Texans head coach DeMeco Ryans, who he was in that draft class with. He's now been teammates with somebody born in 1964, John Carney, and Austin Booker, who was born in 2002. Charlotte, this is insane.
Oh my God. That's wild. I mean, good for Mercedes. That is so wildly impressive. That's like physics defying stuff to still be a tight end at the age of 40. I said this before and I got made fun of, but Mercedes Lewis, when I worked at Sports Illustrated, was at the Fashionable 50 party, and he was wearing this very cool, I want to say it like Balenciaga, like anorak or something. Anyway, he looked great. I always think of windbreakers when I think of Mercedes Lewis.
Oh, okay. All right. Windbreaker.
Yeah, A fantastic
Anyway.
windbreaker for Mercedes. Mercedes Lewis, I think to Charlotte's point there, he's a marker of time for all of us here. Mercedes Lewis for me is like an Inception, how everyone has a totem that grounds them to reality. Every year I look up and see Mercedes Lewis catch a pass in the beginning of the season, and I'm reminded he's still there. To me, grounds me in reality. I saw him on the field last year before the Chargers game. He's like the size of a refrigerator. He's a massive human being. And Dad, I am just grateful that he is still going away at it, because to do that at his age, for Aaron Rodgers is one thing, for quarterbacks. For a guy that's got to play a position that demands as much physicality as tight end, that's damn impressive.
And only his third team, right? Jacksonville for 12, Green Bay for 5, and this is his second year in Chicago. So it's not like he's just hanging on and is going to have that memorabilia room with 13 different teams on it over 18 years. So pretty damn impressive what he's done. But even more impressive, Mike. Let's get to what we really need to get to here, Mike.
Yes, let's get to the third on this. And I'm going to give Claudia a break because I want her to respond to what we're about to see. Yesterday, we saw the video of James Harden at a wedding, the bouquet toss. His girlfriend catches it. He looks shocked and horrified in the crowd. It led to a discussion about the bouquet catches at weddings. You're seeing right here on DraftKings Network, James Harden's girlfriend gets the bouquet. He gets the bug eyes because anytime it's time to go win a ring, James Harden is going to get ready to clam up and run away from that situation. This led to a discussion about bouquet tosses at wedding and an admission from our own Claudia Bellafato that she has gone after the bouquet with an intensity unknown to the rest of mankind. And we have obtained video footage of Claudia going full offensive pass interference at this wedding here. So let's take a look and grade the tape here. I want the response first from Claudia to explain herself after we hit play.
Oh my God!
Oh my God.
She didn't even get
Full
the bouquet out of
extension.
her hand before Claudia. Full extension. Like on pass interference for the offensive player, if you can keep the elbow tight, you might get away with it. But Claudia, full extension, that's a rookie mistake right there. What was going on here?
Not many thoughts. Like, I don't even have shoes on in that picture. I was going hard for it. I think they sat me out of the second round. They're like, you know what? You need to go.
Okay,
Did
so
you get it?
I got a question. No. She didn't even throw. We'll get to that. Now, in this, for those that aren't seeing this, please find a way to see it. The bride didn't even throw the bouquet.
No.
It was in her hands. There was a girl kind of rushing to be up front, and Claudia's behind her, literally gives her one of the great pass defensive interference shoves I've ever seen. Was this more about you not wanting the bouquet or not wanting that girl to get the bouquet because you didn't like her?
It was about the champagne, Senior. We were just having fun. I didn't really, I don't need it that bad. That's my friend Jess. We always, honestly, we act like children together. We beat each other up. So that was just.
That's like the Jaylen Brown push on PJ Washington at the end of game 2.
Oh, right. That didn't get called. Yeah.
He's going up it's almost form. It's perfect form.
Did she fall down? Did this girl fall down? She goes out of frame. She may have gone into the hand or something. I don't even know where she ended up.
I'm pretty sure Jess fell down. Yeah.
Like in the
pictures
scene
of this
in the
are
Blind
great
Side
too.
where he dumps her over the fencing outside of the field, 3 yards out of bounds. Like this
Protecting.
is incredible finish. I will say, Claudia, there. Charlotte, have you ever gone this hard for the bouquet at a wedding before?
No. This is impressive stuff. This is next level. Were you a bridesmaid? Or those bridesmaids dresses?
Yeah, bridesmaid.
Yeah. When you're a bridesmaid, it's been a long day. You had to get your hair and makeup done at 8:30 in the morning.
4:30
in the morning.
Mm-hmm. So thank you.
The wedding industrial complex. I can't even. I'm not going to get into it. It's ridiculous. Yes. I probably would have been shoving other people out of the way too. Claudia, kudos.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
You know what?
Wow.
What I
That's all
appreciate most is Claudia saw an opportunity for competition, and she didn't run from it. She ran towards the fight because she was not afraid of the smoke in that moment. Wasn't even about the bouquet. It was about that there was a ball in the air of any kind, and if she had a chance to get it, she was going to. If you enjoy the thrill of competition, well, we hope you enjoy this show. Download, subscribe, rate, review it. Thanks so much. Download, subscribe, rate, review Oddball with Charlotte and Amin, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.